She called a black single dad's $5 million check fake until the CEO addressed him as Sir. Sir, I'm going to be honest with you because I think you deserve honesty. This is not a real check. The branch manager held it up so the light came through it. $5 million. State Treasury seal. Comptroller's signature. A control number in the bottom left corner in a typeface the state of Pennsylvania has used since 1974. People like you, she said, do not walk in with checks like this. She didn't whisper it. That's the part everyone got stuck on later. She said it at a completely normal volume in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, 12 feet from a 19-year-old with a phone already recording. The man in front of her didn't raise his voice. He didn't get up. He said, "Ma'am, would you say that again slower?" And she did. 40 minutes later, a woman in a navy coat came through the front doors at a pace that made two people step out of the way. She did not stop at the manager's desk. She did not stop for the assistant who was already saying her name. She crossed the whole lobby and stopped in front of the man in the gray work jacket, and every drop of blood left the branch manager's face when the CEO of Cardinal Federal Bank said quietly, "Mr. Ford, sir, it's me." This is the story of Isaiah Ford. And the reason those two words landed like a car through a window is that this was not the first time Cardinal Federal had told him he was lying. There is a line on the back of a state compensation check in 6-point type that almost nobody reads. This instrument must be negotiated within 90 days of issue. Instruments presented after that period shall be returned to the office of the comptroller for cancellation and reissue. Isaiah Ford had read it 11 times. He knew exactly what reissue meant because he had already been through the state's reissue process once on a smaller matter, and it had taken him 7 months and 4 notarized affidavits and a hearing he had to take a day off work for. The check was issued on the 14th of March. It was now the 12th of June. Day 90. Isaiah was 44 years old. He was a diesel mechanic, had been at 19, was again at 41, with an 11-year gap in the middle that his resume handled with a single line his lawyer had helped him write. He was a big man who moved carefully the way men do when they've spent a long time in rooms where sudden movement is a problem. He wore a gray work jacket with the sleeves pushed up and a name patch that said I. Ford. Because the shop had ordered them that way, and he liked seeing his own name on his own chest. He had a truck. He had a rented duplex on Kestrel Avenue with a garage he'd turned into a shop. He had 4 apprentices at the technical college on Thursday nights, 3 of whom he'd talked out of quitting. And he had a son. Malachi Ford was 16. He was 6'1" and getting taller in a way that seemed almost rude, and he had his mother's jaw and his father's stillness. And for the first 3 years of his life, his father had put him to bed every single night. Then for the next 11, Isaiah had seen him on the 3rd Saturday of the month behind 2 inches of laminated glass. Renee had brought him every time. Every single month, 11 years, a 2-hour drive each way. Renee, who had gotten a stroke at 40 and died on a kitchen floor 14 months after Isaiah came home, right when the 3 of them were finally learning how to be a family instead of a schedule. So it was the 2 of them now. A man and a teenager in a duplex, both of them trying to figure out how to talk to each other without a phone receiver and a piece of glass. Malachi had come along that day because Isaiah asked him to, not for help, not for support. "I want you to see it," Isaiah had said that morning. "Front door business hours, my name on the paper. I want that in your head." Because here is what Malachi Ford had in his head. Instead, a father in a jumpsuit. A father on the news at 11 with a booking photo that ran for 9 days straight. A father who Malachi had been told at school by kids' parents by a substitute teacher one time who didn't know he was in the room, a father who had robbed a bank. Isaiah wanted to overwrite it. That's all he wanted from Tuesday, June 12th. He wanted his son to watch him walk into a bank as a customer. Here is what happened in 2010 in 90 seconds because you need it. A branch of Cardinal Federal on Pell Street was robbed at 4:20 on a Thursday. One man, dark hooded sweatshirt, a note, no weapon shown. He got $11,000 in change and was gone in under 2 minutes. Isaiah Ford was 30 years old working second shift at a fleet garage 6 blocks away. A tip came in. It was wrong. It came from a man with charges of his own who needed something to trade, and by the time anyone examined it properly, it had already done what it needed to do. It had put Isaiah's photograph into an array of 6. And a 22-year-old teller who had been 11 feet from the robber who had been shaking so hard for 4 hours that a paramedic checked her twice who wanted more than anything in the world to be useful to the detective. who kept telling her how brave she was. That teller looked at 6 photographs and touched one of them. She said, "That's him. I think that's him." The detective wrote down witness identified suspect without hesitation. He left out the "I think." Isaiah Ford was convicted in 11 months on that identification, a jailhouse informant who later recanted, and no physical evidence of any kind. He served 11 years, 2 months and 9 days. He was exonerated on a Wednesday morning in a hearing that took 19 minutes. The state's compensation statute came to a number, and after fees and the lien and everything else, the number on the paper in his jacket pocket was $5 million. $5 million. For 11 years, 2 months and 9 days, and a boy's whole childhood. He did not consider it money. He considered it a receipt. He'd waited 89 days to cash it for a reason that was not complicated and was not smart. He didn't want it. Every time he'd gotten close, he'd found something else to do. It sat in a fireproof box under his bench for 3 months, and every so often he'd take it out and look at it, and what he saw was not $5 million. What he saw was a number the state had put on the years, and he wasn't ready to agree with it. Malachi is the one who ended it. 2 nights before, at the kitchen table over a college brochure they'd been not discussing for a week, the kid had said, "Pop, it's gonna expire." "I know." "So, you're just gonna let it?" "I know, Mal." And Malachi Ford, 16 years old, had said the thing that got them into that bank lobby. "They took 11 years. You gonna let 'em take this too, 'cause you're mad?" Isaiah looked at his son for a long moment. Then he said, "Get in the truck Tuesday. Wear a collar." The Cardinal Federal branch on Pell Street had been remodeled twice since 2010. New floors, new counters, a little seating area with a fake plant. But it was the same building, the same door, the same corner of the same block, and Isaiah Ford stood outside it for 11 seconds before he went in. Malachi noticed. "You good?" "Yeah." "Pop." "I'm good." They went in. Bethany Kroll had managed the Pell Street branch for 4 years. She was 38. She had a plaque on her wall for third-quarter deposit growth and a spreadsheet on her second monitor that tracked her team against the other 11 branches in the district, and she was in her own account of herself a person who held the line. That was the phrase she used. She used it in meetings. Somebody's got to hold the line. What holding the line meant in practice was that Bethany Kroll had a picture in her head of what a customer looked like, and a different picture in her head of what a problem looked like. And the pictures had been assembled a long time ago out of material she had never once gone back and inspected. She looked up when the door opened. A big black man in a work jacket with a name patch. A teenage boy, tall hands in his pockets. And Bethany Kroll's afternoon reorganized itself around a conclusion she had reached before either of them had finished crossing the mat. The line was 4 deep. They waited. At the counter, an older teller, Wendell Pruitt, 63, 31 years at Cardinal Federal, the kind of man who still said yes ma'am to 19-year-olds, looked at the deposit slip, then at the check, and his eyebrows went up. "Well," he said. "Okay. Mr. Ford, I'm going to need to get a manager on this just because of the amount. That's not a comment on anything, that's just my limit." "Understood." "You want to sit down? This might take a few." "I'll stand." Wendell walked the check over to Bethany Kroll's desk and put it in front of her, face up. He said later under oath that he watched her look at the check for about 1 second, and then look up over the top of it across the lobby at the man standing at his window, and then look back down. "He gave you this?" "Yes, ma'am." "And ID. State ID and his exoneration paperwork. It's got a control letter from the comptroller's office with it. It's all there, I checked it twice." Bethany Kroll said, "Send him over." She did not stand when he reached her desk. She did not offer a hand. "Have a seat, sir." Isaiah sat. Malachi stayed standing half a step behind his father's shoulder, and Bethany looked at him for a beat too long. "He can wait in the lobby." "He's fine where he is," Isaiah said. "Sir, I'd prefer—" "He's 16. He's my son. He's staying." The word 16 did something to her mouth. She'd assumed older. She'd assumed something else entirely, and being corrected on a small thing in front of a teller by a man in a work jacket set the tone for everything that came after. "All right," she said. "Let's talk about this check." "Where did you get it?" "The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania." "The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Office of the Comptroller. It's a wrongful conviction compensation award." Isaiah slid a blue folder across the desk. "That's the judgment. That's the order of exoneration. That's the letter with the control number, and the number on the letter matches the number on the check. There's a phone line on the letterhead that answers until 5. Bethany Kroll did not open the folder. She moved it 3 inches to the left with 2 fingers, the way you move a plate you're not going to eat off of. Mr. Ford, can I ask you something directly? Go ahead. Do you know what a fraudulent government instrument looks like? I know what this one looks like, Isaiah said. It's been in my house for 90 days. Because they look like this. She held it up at eye level and turned it so the light came through the paper. Big round number, government seal, long story attached to it, and every single time, there's a reason it has to happen today. It does have to happen today. 90-day window. It's printed on the back. Of course it is. Ma'am, you can read it. It's right. Sir, I'm going to be honest with you because I think you deserve honesty. And Bethany Kroll leaned forward and said the sentence. This is not a real check. The lobby did not go silent. That's a thing stories do that real life doesn't. The lobby kept going. A printer, the door chimed somebody's phone, but 4 people heard it. Wendell Pruitt at window 1. A woman at the standing desk with a stack of coin rolls. Malachi Ford standing half a step behind his father's shoulder, who did not move a muscle because Renee had spent 11 years teaching him not to. And Camille Ortiz, 19 years old, sitting in the little seating area next to the fake plant waiting on a cashier's check for her fall tuition, who had been half listening for 4 minutes and was now not half listening at all. People like you, Bethany Kroll said, do not walk in with checks like this. Camille Ortiz's phone came up. She did it low against her knee screen, dimmed the way a 19-year-old knows how to do without being taught. She did not say a word. She just started recording, and she kept recording for the next 31 minutes. Isaiah Ford sat very still. Then he said, Ma'am, would you say that again slower? Bethany Kroll, and this is the thing. This is the whole thing, heard a request for clarification and interpreted it as an opening. She thought she was winning. I said, she repeated slower, that people who come in here with an instrument like this in a jacket with a folder with a deadline, I have seen it. I have seen it a lot. And I would rather be rude to you for 10 minutes than let you be a victim of something. I'm not a victim of anything. That's what everyone says. Isaiah nodded slowly. He looked down at his hands on his knees for a second. Then he said, You're right that people say that. So let's do it the other way. Don't take my word. Call the number. Which number? The comptroller's office. It's on the letter you haven't opened. Sir, anybody can print a letter. Then call the state directly. Not from my letter. Look up the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania yourself on your own computer and call the main line and give them the control number that is printed on the check in your hand, and they will tell you in 4 minutes whether that instrument is live. It was the most reasonable sentence spoken in that building all day, and Bethany Kroll's answer to it was to put him on hold in his own chair. 2:47 p.m. Give me a minute, sir. She got up. She left the check on her blotter face up under her elbow's worth of paperwork, and she walked out into the lobby because a man in a quarter zip and boat shoes had come through the door, and Bethany Kroll called him Greg. Greg, hey, how was Hilton Head? They talked for 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Camille Ortiz's recording has all of it, and the reason 41 million people eventually watch those 4 minutes is not that anything happens in them. It's that nothing does. A branch manager laughs about a golf handicap. She asks about somebody's daughter's wedding. She says, "Let me just grab that for you," and walks a form over herself personally and stands there while a man fills it out and says, "You have a great one, we'll see you next week." And in the corner of the frame, out of focus, a man in a gray work jacket sits at an empty desk beside his son with a folder nobody has opened. Malachi Ford watched the whole thing. He said later to a reporter at 17 in the only interview he has ever given that the 4 minutes were worse than everything that came after. "The yelling part you can point at," he said. "The 4 minutes you can't point at. She wasn't doing anything to us. She was just doing something nice to somebody else 12 feet away where we could see it." Isaiah didn't watch. He looked at the wall at a framed poster about certificates of deposit, and he did not turn his head one time in 4 minutes. And Malachi understood with a kind of sick clarity that a 16-year-old should not have to arrive at that. His father had gotten very, very good at not watching things he couldn't do anything about. 2:52 p.m. She came back and sat down like nothing had happened. Okay, where were we? You were about to call the Commonwealth, Isaiah said. Mr. Ford? She folded her hands. Let me offer you something. I'm not looking for an offer. I'd like to open you a basic checking account today. No minimum. I'll waive the maintenance fee for the first year personally out of my discretion. She said personally with a small warm emphasis the way you'd hand somebody a coat. Get you started with us. Get a relationship on the books. And then when a large instrument comes through, there's a history, and this kind of thing doesn't happen. Isaiah looked at her for a long moment. This kind of thing, he repeated. It's a real recommendation. I make it to people all the time. Ma'am, I've had an account at Wheatland Credit Union for 3 years, direct deposit never overdrawn. My son's got a custodial savings account with $2,040 in it that he earned at a car wash. His voice did not go up. It went down, which was somehow worse. You're not offering me a relationship. You're offering me a smaller size. Bethany Kroll's smile stayed on her face for about a second and a half after it stopped meaning anything. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to end this conversation in a way where you were nice, Isaiah said. Those aren't the same thing. And that, not the folder, not the deadline, not the control number, is what made Bethany Kroll do the thing she could not come back from. Because to make that phone call, she would have had to accept in front of Wendell, in front of the boy, in front of the girl with the phone, the possibility that the picture in her head was wrong. So instead, she picked up the receiver and called the Cardinal Federal Fraud Desk. The Fraud Desk is a phone bank in Ohio. It is staffed by analysts with scripts, and the analyst who picked up was a 26-year-old named Dev, who was 9 minutes from the end of his shift. Bethany Kroll gave him her branch code and said, I have a suspected counterfeit government instrument presented in branch high dollar, and I need to know my options. She did not say state exoneration award. She did not say he brought the judgment, the order, and a control letter. She said suspected counterfeit. And Dev, reading the script that exists for exactly this, said the sentence that Cardinal Federal's outside counsel would later spend a great deal of money contextualizing. If you've got a reasonable belief it's counterfeit, you can retain the instrument, you file the alert, and you use your judgment on whether local law enforcement needs to be involved. Use your judgment. Bethany Kroll hung up. She turned to her keyboard, opened the alert form, and while Isaiah Ford sat 4 feet away watching her do it, she typed a suspected counterfeit instrument report. Amount $5 million. Presenter: Ford Isaiah T. Basis for suspicion: presenter's profile and account history inconsistent with instrument. No prior relationship. Story implausible. Then she attached her name to it and hit submit. It went to the fraud desk, to district operations, and because of the dollar amount and because of what she had checked in a box she barely looked at, into a federal reporting queue. Under her signature. 28 days later, that submission would end her career more completely than the video did. Mr. Ford. She set the check face down on her blotter and put her hand flat on top of it. I'm going to retain this. Isaiah's eyes went to her hand. Say that again. The item is being retained pending review. I'll give you a receipt for it. That's my property. It's a suspect instrument. It's the state's instrument, Isaiah said. Made out to me. It expires at close of business today, and if it goes back for cancellation, it's 6 to 9 months for reissue, and you're going to put your hand on it and tell me you're keeping it because my profile doesn't fit. I'm following procedure. You made the procedure up on that phone call 4 minutes ago. And Bethany Kroll, who had never in her life been in a room where she was clearly, publicly, verifiably in the wrong, reached for the last tool in the box. Kurt, she called across the lobby. Can you come here, please? Kurt Manning was the branch loss prevention officer. 46, ex-military police. Good at his job in the narrow sense of the phrase and the possessor of an internal setting that made him extremely comfortable being the one who stands closest. He came over and stood at the corner of the desk, angled slightly toward Isaiah, hands loose. Kurt, Mr. Ford is finishing up. I'm not finished. Sir. Kurt's voice was pleasant. Why don't we step over here? Malachi Ford moved. Half a step, that's all, a 16-year-old shifting his weight toward his father, and 3 adults reacted to it at once, and Isaiah Ford's hand came up and landed flat against his son's chest. Mal. Pop. Mal. Isaiah did not look at him. He kept his eyes on the desk. Hands out of your pockets. Stand right there. Don't say anything. The boy's hands came out of his pockets. He stood right there. He didn't say anything. And Camille Ortiz, 19, recording from a chair by a fake plant, would later say that this was the moment she stopped being nervous about whether she should be filming, because she watched a father in the middle of being robbed of $5 million stop and coach his son on how to survive a bank lobby. That clip is 11 seconds long. It has been viewed 41 million times. Here is what happened at Window 1 while that was going on. Wendell Pruitt, 63 years old, 31 years at Cardinal Federal, had a customer in front of him and a bad feeling in his chest. He processed the customer. He said, "Have a good one." Then he did 3 things in order, and he did them without hurrying, because Wendell Pruitt had learned in 1994 that the way you survive a bad room is by doing correct things slowly. 1. He printed the transaction log for his own window, which showed the check presented at 2:41 p.m., logged, imaged, and referred to management. Time-stamped. He folded it and put it in his shirt pocket. 2. He opened the branch's item imaging system and confirmed that the front and back of the instrument had been captured at intake, which meant the control number now existed in Cardinal Federal's own records, whether anybody liked it or not. 3. He walked into the back hallway, took out his personal cell phone, and called a number he had used exactly twice in 31 years. The office of the CEO. He got an assistant. He said, "My name is Wendell Pruitt. I'm a senior teller at Pell Street, and I need somebody to tell Ms. Locke that we have a state exoneration award being retained as counterfeit on the floor right now." The assistant said, "I'm sorry, did you say Pell Street?" "Yes, ma'am." "Hold, please." 9 seconds. Then a voice that was not the assistant said, "Wendell, this is Vivian Locke. What is the name on that check?" Wendell Pruitt looked at the folded printout in his shirt pocket. He didn't need it. "Ford," he said. "Isaiah Ford." The line went completely silent for 4 full seconds. Then, "Do not let him leave that building." Bethany Kroll wrote him a receipt. That's the detail that made people angriest. Not the accusation, not the loss prevention officer standing at his shoulder the receipt. A 3-inch slip of thermal paper that said, she tore it off the printer and held it out across the desk with a small professional, almost kind expression, and she said, "You'll want to keep that." Isaiah Ford looked at the slip of paper in her hand for a long moment. "Ma'am," he said, "do you know what building you're sitting in?" "Excuse me?" "This branch, this corner. Do you know what happened here?" "Sir, I don't know what you're—" "May of 2010, Isaiah said. 4:20 on a Thursday. A man in a gray hooded sweatshirt handed a note across that counter. The counters moved, but it was right about there and left with 11,000 and change. Bethany Kroll's hand holding out the receipt did not move. "They arrested me for it," Isaiah said. Silence. "I was 6 blocks from here up to my elbows in a transmission with 3 men who said so. Didn't matter. A teller picked my picture out of a stack of 6 and said, 'I think that's him,' and a detective wrote it down without the 'I think,' and I did 11 years, 2 months, and 9 days. He nodded at the check face down under her hand. "That's what that is. That's not a story about a lottery or an inheritance or an internet boyfriend. That's the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania writing down a number for 11 years of my life. And you have decided in the same building at the same counter that I am lying." Nobody in that lobby was pretending not to listen anymore. "Twice," Isaiah said. "Cardinal Federal has now told me I'm lying twice." And Bethany Kroll, who had one single exit available to her, one door marked, "I'm going to make that phone call now," said, "Sir, I'm not going to be manipulated." 2:59 p.m. Kurt Manning walked them to the door. He wasn't rough. He never touched either of them. He walked at Isaiah's left shoulder and said, "This way, sir," twice, and held the door, and Isaiah walked out onto Pell Street with a slip of thermal paper in his hand and his son beside him. Malachi made it to the sidewalk. "That's it." His voice cracked in the middle, which it had mostly stopped doing, and it cracking made it worse. "Pop, that's you're just walking out. They took $5 million off you and you said yes, ma'am, and walked." "Yeah." "Why?" Isaiah Ford stopped on the sidewalk and turned to face his son. "Because there are 2 of us out here," he said, "and I need both of us to go home tonight. That's the whole reason. That's the entire reason." Malachi's eyes were wet and furious. "That ain't fair." "No," Isaiah said. "It is not. So what do we do?" Isaiah looked at the slip of paper in his hand. Then he folded it once and put it in his shirt pocket next to the pen. "We keep the receipt," he said, "and we go make a phone call from somewhere they can't hang up for us." They got as far as the truck. 3:04 p.m. Camille Ortiz came out of that bank at a dead run. She still had her hands full, her ID, her paperwork, her tuition, cashier's check that she'd forgotten to pick up. She ran across the lot in flip-flops and got to the driver's side window of a 2011 pickup, out of breath, holding her phone up like a badge. Sir, I got it. I got all of it. Isaiah rolled the window down. Got what, sweetheart? I recorded her. Camille's hands were shaking. From the part where she said it wasn't real. I got the people like you part. I got 31 minutes. It's still going. I forgot to stop it. She laughed once wildly. I'm sorry I didn't ask you. I know I should have asked you. Do you want me to delete it? I'll delete it right now if you want. Isaiah Ford looked at this 19-year-old girl standing in a parking lot in flip-flops holding out her phone. He said, What's your name, Camille? Camille, how old are you? 19. You in school? Community. I was in there getting my tuition check. She wiped her face with the back of her wrist. Sir, do you want me to delete it or not? Because my hands are like, Don't delete it, Isaiah said. The Navy sedan pulled into the Pell Street lot at 3:19 p.m. Vivian Locke had been in a strategy review on the 14th floor of a building 9 miles away at 2:58. She left it mid-sentence. Her chief of staff followed her to the elevator and was told in the elevator to cancel everything until further notice and to have general counsel and the head of retail banking on the phone in 20 minutes. She was 55 years old. She had been CEO of Cardinal Federal for 3 years and with the bank for 33. She had started as a teller at the Pell Street branch in 2009. Bethany Kroll saw the Navy coat come through the door and stood up so fast she knocked her mouse off the desk. Ms. Locke, oh my, we weren't told you were Kurt. Get. Vivian Locke did not look at her. She crossed the lobby in a straight line past the desk, past Kurt Manning, and stopped in front of Wendell Pruitt at window 1. Where is he? He left, ma'am, about 15 minutes ago. Left. He was walked out. Vivian Locke's jaw moved once. Is he gone? Wendell Pruitt pointed through the glass at the parking lot where a 2011 pickup was still sitting in a space by the fence with a girl in flip-flops standing at the driver's window. Vivian Locke went back out the door she'd come in. She crossed the lot fast. She was talking on the phone as she came 3 words that Camille's recording caught and that got clipped and captioned and posted about 100,000 times. No, now, no. She hung up. She stopped 6 feet from the truck. And then Vivian Locke, chief executive officer of a bank with 411 branches, stood in a parking lot on Pell Street and could not for a second make her mouth work. Isaiah Ford opened the truck door and got out. He looked at her. She looked at him. 14 years is not that long. It is long enough that a 22-year-old becomes a woman of 55 and a 30-year-old becomes a man of 44. But faces keep the important parts. Isaiah Ford's face changed, slowly, like a light coming up. Mr. Ford, Vivian Locke said. Sir, it's me. Malachi from inside the truck. Pop, who is that? Isaiah didn't answer him. He said to her, You cut your hair. And Vivian Locke put her hand over her mouth and stood in a parking lot and cried in front of 11 people in a phone that was still recording. Here's what nobody in that lobby knew. The 22-year-old teller who touched a photograph in 2010 spent 4 years believing she'd done a brave thing. In 2014, she read a filing. In 2015, she wrote a letter to a legal clinic that nobody answered. In 2017, she wrote another one, and somebody did. She sat for a deposition in 2019 in which she said on the record under oath that she had been shown a six-pack in which only one photograph matched the vague description she'd given that the detective had said, Take your time. We know it's hard in a way that told her which one to take her time on and that she had said, I think that's him, and that she had never in her life been certain and had never been asked to be. She testified at the hearing in 2021, 19 minutes. And when it was over, she stood up in the gallery to try to say something to a man walking out of a courtroom into 11 years' worth of daylight, and she couldn't do it because what do you say, and because his sister was in the way, and because a bailiff moved her along. She had written him 4 letters since. She had sent none of them. They went back inside. That's the part people don't expect. Vivian Locke asked him and Isaiah Ford, who had every right in the world to say absolutely not, said, Mal, come on. and walked back through the doors of the Pell Street branch of Cardinal Federal Bank for the second time that afternoon. Bethany Kroll was standing at her desk with her hands folded in front of her. "Ms. Locke, I want to be very clear that I followed the counterfeit protocol exactly as, where is the item? It's I retained it per the, where is the item?" Bethany Kroll opened her drawer and took out a state compensation check for $5 million and no cents. Vivian Locke did not take it from her. "Give it to Mr. Ford." "Ma'am." "Walk around your desk," Vivian Locke said, and put it in his hand. The whole branch watched Bethany Kroll walk around her own desk and hold out a piece of paper to a man in a gray work jacket with a name patch on it. Isaiah Ford took it. He looked at it front and back. He folded it once the way he'd folded it 100 times in 90 days and put it in his inside pocket. Then he said to Bethany Kroll, "You said people like you." Bethany Kroll's mouth opened. "You want to tell her what you meant?" Isaiah asked. "Because I've been standing out in that lot for 15 minutes trying to come up with a version where it means something else and I can't get there." She said nothing. "That's what I figured," Isaiah said. Vivian Locke turned to the branch. "Wendell." "Ma'am?" "You called me?" "Yes, ma'am." "Why?" Wendell Pruitt considered that for a second 31 years of careful answers behind him, and then decided not to give a careful one. "Because I've worked in this building 22 of my 31 years, he said, "and I know what happened here in 2010, and I watched us do a version of it again with the same man's name on the paper. And I figured somebody upstairs would want to know before the 6 o'clock news did." Vivian Locke nodded slowly. "Kurt." "Ma'am." "Did you walk this man and his son out of this building?" "I did, ma'am. At my manager's instruction." "Did you ask why?" Kurt Manning opened his mouth, closed it. "No, ma'am." "That was your entire job," Vivian Locke said, "and you did every part of it except that one." And then she turned to Bethany Kroll and asked the question that ended it. "Did you call the Commonwealth?" "I, the fraud desk, advised." "That is not what I asked. Did you call the number on the letter or look up the comptroller's office or call any office of the state of Pennsylvania at any point about the control number printed on that check?" Bethany Kroll said no. "How long did you have him at that desk?" "About 20 minutes." 20 minutes! Vivian Locke's voice did not rise. "That call takes 4. She looked around the lobby, once the counter, the floor, the corner where a man in a gray hooded sweatshirt had stood in 2010 and changed 6 lives. "Give me your keys and your badge," she said. "Kurt, you're on administrative leave as of right now. Wendell, you have the branch until Monday." Then Vivian Locke turned to the girl in flip-flops standing by the fake plant with her phone still recording, and she said, "Are you getting all of this?" Camille Ortiz froze. "I am, I." "Good," Vivian Locke said. "Don't stop." The check cleared at 4:26 p.m., 99 minutes before the 90-day window closed. Wendell Pruitt processed it himself at window 1 and had to enter the confirmation twice because his hands weren't steady. The video went up that night. Camille Ortiz posted 11 seconds of it, the part where a father puts his hand on his son's chest and says, "Hands out of your pockets, stand right there, don't say anything," with no caption except the date. By Thursday, it had 13 million views. By the following Tuesday, 41. Bethany Kroll was terminated for cause on June 14th. But the video is not what finished her, and it's important to understand why, because this is the part people miss. What finished her was the form she filed. At 2:51 p.m. on June 12th, Bethany Kroll submitted a suspected counterfeit instrument report on a validly issued state government check under her own name, listing as her basis for suspicion the presenter's profile and an implausible story. That report entered a federal queue. It generated a file number. It could not be deleted, amended, or walked back because that is the entire point of the system it entered. 28 days later, a regulatory review of the Pell Street branch produced a finding that attached her name to language about discriminatory denial of service. She is permanently ineligible for employment at any institution insured by the FDIC. She sued for wrongful termination in the fall. Cardinal Federal produced her own filing, her own signature, her own 31-minute recording, and the case did not survive summary judgment. She has never given an interview. In the one written statement she released through an attorney, she said she had followed procedure as trained. She did not apologize, and she did not say the words "people like you," and that omission has been noticed by roughly 41 million people. Kurt Manning resigned during his administrative leave rather than sit for the interview. He now works private security at a distribution center. He told a reporter one thing once on a loading dock: "I didn't do anything," which is exactly correct and is the entire finding against him. The fraud desk analyst Dev was not disciplined. Vivian Locke was explicit about this in writing. He read the script we gave him. The script is the defect. Cardinal Federal's counterfeit protocol was rewritten in 90 days. The phrase "use your judgment" was removed from 4 separate scripts and replaced with a hard requirement for any government-issued instrument: the issuing agency must be contacted before any retention or report. That call is now mandatory, logged, and auditable. Internally, the rewrite is called the Ford Standard. Isaiah Ford did not ask for that and did not want his name on it. He lost that argument to a 16-year-old at a kitchen table who pointed out that the whole point was to have his name on something the bank had to obey. Wendell Pruitt was offered the permanent branch manager position at Pell Street. He declined. He said he had 2 years left and he liked Window 1. He accepted instead a role as the bank's first field ombudsman, which he described as getting paid to ask the question I already ask for free. He retired in April. 200 employees came. Camille Ortiz was offered a scholarship by Cardinal Federal's Foundation within 48 hours in a press release drafted before anyone spoke to her. She turned it down. She said, and this got clipped too, "You don't get to buy the video." Her tuition is paid by the Renee Ford Scholarship, which is funded by a man who came into some money in June and who has never once described it as his. Vivian Locke offered Isaiah Ford her resignation in writing 3 days later in a room with 2 lawyers who advised her against it. He didn't take it. What he said to her, and this is secondhand from her from a podcast 18 months later where she cried again, was, "You already quit once. In 2010. When you knew and you didn't say anything for 4 years, you quit. Then you came back. That's the only part of this I've got any use for." She stayed CEO for another 18 months. Then she stepped down on her own timeline and took over the Ford Standard rollout across the industry full-time, at a fraction of the money out of a 2-room office. She still has the 4 unsent letters. She's shown them to exactly one person. Isaiah Ford still works Thursdays at the technical college. He still drives the pickup, though he did finally replace the clutch. He bought the duplex he'd been renting, and then he bought the other half of it. And then he did something that made his accountant put down his pen. He called the landlord of the building next door and bought the garage, not for himself, for the program. 22 men and 4 women have come through it so far, all of them within 3 years of coming home. Diesel HVAC and industrial electrical real certifications, the kind that show up on a real license, the kind that make a hiring manager stop reading the box at the bottom of the application. There's a sign over the bay door. It's not the program's name. Isaiah made it himself out of 1/4-inch plate on a Saturday, and it says nobody who works there has to have it explained. Malachi Ford is 17 now. He got into 3 schools. He picked the one 4 hours away over his father's mild and unconvincing objections, and he is studying. This is true, and Isaiah has never once managed to say it out loud without his voice doing something criminal justice. He wants to work for a conviction integrity unit. His father asked him why once in a truck on the drive up in August. And Malachi Ford said, "Because somebody had to read Mom's letters before somebody finally did. I want to be the one who reads them." They drove about 4 miles without saying anything. Then Isaiah said, "Your mother would have been unbearable about this." Oh, completely unbearable. She'd have put it on a shirt. She'd have put it on 2 shirts, Pop. All right, let's be straight with each other. Isaiah Ford isn't real. Neither is Bethany Kroll, or the branch on Pell Street, or the girl in flip-flops with a phone against her knee. But the 20 minutes are real. They happen every day in bank lobbies and jewelry stores and emergency rooms and hotel front desks to people who dressed for the job they actually do. Somebody looks at a jacket or a pair of hands or a name and decides, and then spends the rest of the afternoon defending the decision instead of picking up a phone that would have settled it in 4 minutes. And here's the thing I want you to notice about this one. Bethany Kroll had an exit the entire time. It was sitting on her desk in an unopened blue folder. It was a phone number on a letterhead that answered until 5 o'clock. 4 minutes. 4 minutes and none of it happens. Not the receipt, not the walkout, not the federal filing, not 41 million views, not the end of a career she'd spent 16 years building. She didn't refuse to make the call because she was cruel. She refused because making it would have meant admitting out loud in front of a teller and a teenager that the picture in her head might be wrong. That's the actual villain in almost every one of these stories. Not hatred, the unwillingness to be corrected in public. So let me put it on you. Forget Vivian. Vivian's the fantasy, the navy coat coming through the door at 319, the 14-year debt getting paid in a parking lot. Most days there's no navy coat. Most days the only thing standing between a man and 20 minutes of being told he's a liar is one person in the room willing to say something slightly awkward out loud. Did anybody call the number? Sir, are you okay? Hey, I'm recording this as that, all right? So tell me honestly, if you'd been at that standing desk with your stack of coin rolls, would you have said something? Or would you have finished your deposit slip and told yourself it wasn't your business? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of somebody's picture in their head, if somebody ever looked at you and decided what you could and couldn't have, type, ask the question down below and go see how many people are down there with you. It's going to be more than you think. If this one hit you, hit like, so it finds the next person who needs it, and subscribe. There's a new one every week. Take care of each other out there. And call the number.